Alright guys, today is my last day in Korea, officially. I'm boarding a ferry in a couple of hours, and I'm going to be headed to Osaka. And then the next phase of my journey is going to commence. Before I leave Korea though, I kind of wanted to go through and give you my impressions of this country in a general way, and maybe show you some of the footage that I've shot along the way. I think that I've really been able to cover Korea pretty completely. And so yeah, so let me give you my impressions of my whole South Korea trip. So I landed in Seoul, which is a big city, bustling, sort of like the New York of South Korea. And I stayed there for a while, talked to some people at City Hall, saw some protests, saw some of the government workings, and it was really interesting to be there because it was right when new president was being picked. A lot of buzz, a lot of energy. I would say my impression of Seoul is modern, hustling and bustling. From there I made my way all the way across. I went from northwest to southeast and ended in Busan, where I was about to take my trip to Japan, but I decided on the coaxing of some of my generous hosts where I was staying that I should go to the island of Jeju. So I took another week and rode around the island of Jeju, and in doing so I got a really interesting perspective of rural Korea, bustling city Korea, tropical Korea, farm Korea, and everything in between. I guess my overall perception of Korea is that in the balance of things, it's very comfortable. I've said this before, but I put South Korea in between Japan and China. I've lived in China for 8 years, and I've spent some time in Japan as well. And Japan is a little bit impersonal. The people there are a little bit thicker walled, tougher nuts to crack. Once you do, they're just like anybody else in the world, friendly and happy and nice. But when you're traveling around the world, you have to figure out ways to break through people's interpersonal barriers as quick as possible so that you can become friends with them, or stay at their house, or learn a little bit about their life. So the thinner that shell is for me, the better I find the interactions with people. And the Japanese so far have the thickest shells. They're very, very polite, and they don't try to impede on your space. They try to keep to their own space. It's not like a negative thing, like they're being jerks. It's just being their own protective self. In China, that shell is very thin, so you'll go out and you'll walk down the street, people put their arm around you and ask to take their picture. They'll buy you a drink, throw you a beer, and at a bar. There's very little barrier between friend and stranger, and I like that personally. Now, South Korea has been a unique blend of the two personalities. People that I run into are a little bit reserved. Some of them are looking at their phones and are trying not to necessarily capture your glance, but if you can capture their glance and you can break through that little shell, I have found that South Korean people are extremely nice. I've had on 3 occasions on this trip, strangers while I'm riding down the road stop, buy a drink, and then give it to me as I pass by, which is an amazing act of generosity that asks for nothing in return. And other things, I've had strangers become fast friends, welcome me into their homes or out for a drink, and I've ended up having the ability to open up completely to them, which is really nice. Also, I've found a pocket of people here that are citizens of the Jayoe Nation. I was flagged down on my trip once and by a complete stranger that said, "Hey, I'm your subscriber, Jayoe," and I was also confronted with a couple of people on trikes, and one of them knew me in the Jayoe tour, so that was very cool. If I'm looking at the whole of South Korea, and I was looking at the category of and the interactions with those people, I would say that Korea rates at about an 8 or an 8.5. That being said, I haven't really been to a 10 yet. I'm not saying that there is a 10. I'm just saying that they're very high on that scale. Convenience. When I come to a new country and I'm about to ride through, I'm apprehensive. I remember the day that I arrived here in Seoul, I was very nervous. I didn't know how the roads were going to be. I didn't know if I was going to be able to find a place to stay easy. I didn't know if I was going to be able to get a SIM card. I didn't know anything. I literally was fresh off the boat. It didn't take long for me to find a comfort zone. And I was talking to my friend yesterday, the fact that, so you're really nervous, and then things get really easy. And then pretty soon you come to this new level where you're really comfortable here. And today I would say I am very comfortable in South Korea. I would have to say I expected more English. I actually see more English on signage and things in China than I did here in South Korea. So that's a little bit of a negative. It's a little bit difficult navigating my way around. But that being said, the roads and the actual infrastructure when you get outside of the major city, I did have problems in Seoul, but beyond the downtown Seoul area, I would have to say that getting your bearings and finding your way around and actually riding, very nice. Navigating, I would say it's a little lower. I'd say that's about a 7 or a 6.5 even. I ended up finding my way around, but it took me a little while and I had to go through a little bit of a learning curve. On top of that, if you go in through the ferry terminal, I wasn't able to get a SIM card right away, and it took me a while to actually get connected to the internet. But that leads me to the third thing, connectivity. I'm gonna give a rare 10 to Korea for connectivity. I have had extremely fast internet. Even in places like in the rural countryside, they have modems there with extremely fast internet. I mean, I upload videos every day, so for me that's very important, and I have to be very vigilant on having good connection. And I've been blessed as I ride through South Korea that I've been able to have reliable internet at coffee shops. In the middle of the road, they have this Wi-Fi network, IP time, that runs through the whole country in pockets, not everywhere, but way more coverage than I have ever experienced anywhere. So connectivity, I would say, is a 10 in South Korea. I don't know if Japan will be the same. Japan is where I'm headed, but it's been really nice. Hey, you know what, guys? Let me continue this later. I think I have to go on the ferry. So I will catch you guys later. We'll see you on the boat. This might be a good chance to talk about food. I've been pleasantly surprised by Korean food. You get a really good mix of some Western flavors, so you can get your fried chicken fix if you want. If you want meats, you can get meats. If you want vegetables, you can get vegetables. And everything has been pretty good. I haven't had anything that I looked at and I said, nah, this was not quality stuff. The problem with that is that it was pretty expensive. Most of the things in Korea I thought were overpriced, even like in places that I didn't think they should be. I ate a bunch of fresh fish almost on the water, and I felt like the prices were the same, if not more, than you'd buy it at the restaurant. I would have thought if you pulled it and plucked it right out of the ocean, you were going to get a pretty good deal, and it was going to be really fresh on top of it. The flavors were all good, the food itself was very good, and I would say on a 1 to 10 scale, I give Korea a solid 8.5 on food. Pretty generous. Nice view. Okay, so what's next? Money. Is South Korea an expensive place to travel? I would say that if you were a little bit more stingy than I was, it could be relatively inexpensive, but from my experience living in China, China is much cheaper. I actually found that eating out, if you wanted to grab a bite and you wanted to have a meal, unless you wanted to go fast food, the prices were pretty expensive. I'm talking like if I wanted to go out and have just like a chicken dinner or something like that, I'm looking at spending around $15 to $20. So I guess on the value side, on the value scale, I would give Korea a 5, maybe a 6. Let's say a 6. I'm sure there are other countries that are going to be dipping down there, but there's definitely a lot of other countries that you could go to get more bang for your buck. I don't think Korea is a bang for your buck sort of place to travel to. That being said, the quality of the things here are very high. You're paying for a level of service that is above and beyond, say, what you would get in, you know, Thailand or even in China in a lot of cases. Just take that as a grain of salt. Now let's talk about accommodations. While I was in South Korea, I stayed the gamut. I stayed in a 5-star hotel. I stayed at a regular hotel. I stayed at a guest house. I stayed at a number of different hostels, from like a community guest house, so it's like a dorm room, to a little bit more isolated, like you can get a single room. I also stayed at a spa, an overnight spa, which I thought was a love motel, which turned out not to be a love motel. And I also stayed at love motels. I think that term sort of scared me in the beginning, but they're not necessarily what you would expect from the word love motel. I was thinking it was going to be like a brothel. What it ended up being was a very inexpensive but very clean room that was designed for people that want to have either one-night trysts with their wife or girlfriend, or somebody else, or the traveler that wants to use it. And those are by far one of the most numerous types of accommodation that I was running into as I traveled. And once I got over the stigma that I actually imparted on the whole idea of a love motel and started using them, I really found them awesome. Not only is the parking lot very secure, there's a lot of cameras there. People go to these hotels for secrecy. And so that secrecy goes to the benefit of the cyclist, because you can put your bike in the parking garage and you know it's going to be under surveillance, it's going to be covered parking, and you're going to be able to get a good night's sleep, hopefully, and you're going to be on your way the next morning. I'd say on accommodations, I give South Korea like a 9. Like really a lot of places to stay. The final thing I'll say is cycle friendly. Is Korea cycle friendly? I would say that the paths that they laid out for me, access to facilities along the way, I took showers on the side of the road, I had bathroom access all the time. The roads to bike on were very nice, that were along the river. Once you got off of the river, you got into the city riding and it was a little bit hectic. But I have to say that Korea, so far in my travels on the trike, which really doesn't encompass too many countries as far as cycling goes, I've traveled a lot, but not necessarily so many places on the trike, I would say that South Korea has to rate at a 9 or a 9.5, like really high up there. There was a section on the lower third of the country that I ran into a stretch of about 50 or 60 kilometers. I didn't see any facilities. I was looking for water, I couldn't find it. But I'm not really going to let that take away from the whole of my experience. So I am now looking to do this same thing, but in Japan. For now, I've got to close the book to South Korea and open the next chapter, Japan.